Hey, it's the Brights coming to you live from our studio kitchen.
Yes, it is Sunday afternoon. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. And we really want to give a shout out to everybody who gets on and watches this, not just live, but goes back and watches it during the week. I mean, it helps fuel us to continue to make these videos. Not that you could stop us anyways, because we love helping people. And, I just want to, it's not a myth buster, but I don't want anybody out there who's watching this to be like, man, every time we see you guys and we talk, we get into an argument and we start fighting because we're going over what you're saying. And I want you to know that that's kind of par for the course sometimes, until you can get to a time in your relationship where you've dealt with some things and you've overcome some things, you've had some victories and you've overcome some challenges, and you guys have kind of worked together as a team and you've worked through some issues. Then it starts to get easier to talk about. So if you're talking to one another and it's just like it turns into an argument, there's just a lot of unresolved issues that haven't been cleared up yet, and you're still working through things. And I just wanted to say that because I know that if we'd have heard this back in the day when we first started going, we were arguing all the time. I mean, it was just every day arguing. So I know that if we tried to talk about something, it would have been an argument. But we had to talk about it to be able to get it out, so that we would be able to move forward, right?
That's true. So hey, how are y'all? Just jumped right in. I'm like, that's
start swimming.
I'm
Start
like,
ride the wave, girl. Ride the wave.
I don't even have a life preserver or a surfboard. So it's Sunday, and today we taught two classes today. Our marriage rocks class, or we have one more Sunday to finish up our pornography series, and then we also taught the pre-marriage class. And so today the pre-marriage class was all about how to fight a good fight. And so when we were going through it, and we've done it for years, we said, you know what, we need to just do some conflict videos on Sunday. So this is going to be kind of the start of one of the, I don't know if we'll do them in a row, but we know that there's several different videos that we can do about how to fight fair and how to have conflict. One of the things that we asked the pre-marriage, first of all, last night, y'all, we went to the best wedding ever in the whole world.
Oh my gosh, yes, a Nigerian wedding.
Yes.
And the traditions that the Nigerian folks have is so beautiful. I wish that America had these traditions of how the groom has to approach the bride's family, and
he has to have a letter of intent, and they read it out loud. Like the wedding started at 6, or the celebration started at 6. I don't even know what time.
I don't think the dancing didn't start until 11. We didn't even eat
till 9:30. I mean, it was just an ongoing celebration and just a party, everybody just loving, and the way that the groom had to petition for the bride and ask everybody, and then they would say, why, who do you want? And he'd have to say his wife's name, Molly, and why do you want her?
Oye and Molly, we love you guys. Yeah, they're actually
prince and princesses, and for real, in Nigeria. So it was just great.
She married her Disney prince.
Yes. And we're just, we do a lot of different weddings, and actually Richard married them a year ago, and so this time their family all got to come, and everybody got to come from all over the world to come to the weddings. That was beautiful. So we're just kind of on that high still. But so we're talking about conflict today, and today we're going to talk about, because for us there's a lot of things that we learned about conflict over the years, like how to clarify content, the 4 things that are that make conflict hard, which is like stonewalling, all that kind of stuff. So we'll break all those down. But today for us, it was hard to even just get to a point to we weren't yelling at each other, and it was just unhealthy. Every time we would try to have a disagreement about something, it might start out as a disagreement, but it would end up to a full-fledged yelling, screaming, acting cray-cray, and both of us just trying to get our way, and both of us wanting to win.
Excuse me.
God bless you.
How many times have you heard that hurting people hurt people?
Yeah.
And that's so true, and it can't be more true than in marriage. But most of the times when we get married, we're on such a love roller coaster, and we just think that, man, once we get married, the reason that we're arguing and we're not getting along is just because we're not married. Once we get married, all of these problems will go away, and they would just magically disappear because now we love each other and we're married,
and
things are just going to work out.
Way. And it just doesn't naturally go that way. And if we don't know how, so one of the things that we always ask the pre-marriage class, whenever we teach the conflict one, which was today, one of the first things we ask them is, have you ever had a fight? Or no, we ask them, how many of you have never had a fight? And today we had a smaller class, so everybody just kind of chuckled. But typically when we have a larger class and we've got 20 or 30 couples, there are one or two that are like, we've never had a fight. And they just think they're the winner, like they're going to get the prize. And then we just say, well, we want you to go home and start one. And then everybody laughs, but truthfully...
And they look at us all angry and offended.
Yeah, it's like, we're never going to fight. And they're all in love, and they're sharing a chair with each other. But you have to know how to fight fair and know how to fight constructively to be able to have conflict. And conflict is actually good for your marriage. We have a saying that we've said for years, and that is, without conflict, there is no growth. And so
we've had a lot of growth.
We grew a lot. We continue to grow because, but conflict is not so derogatory. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's not tearing us apart now. Conflict
it's not so angry anymore.
Yeah.
Now we can actually talk about things that we can talk about anything and just talk as adults on an even keel. Our voice doesn't go up really high or really down low. It's just very across the board, very matter of fact. And hey,
sometimes,
hey, that's true. I mean, there
are times that we just, it escalates because all the things that we know, we just go out the window whenever emotions get on. But for the most part, we do way better than we used to do. But we still have times because that's just life and that's how we are. And I love what Michelle just said. She said, number 3, how to start a conflict.
How to start a conflict.
That we should teach that. Everybody that has that one down pretty good. Yes, conflict can be healthy. That's right, Barbara. And so I remember when we first were together and how if I was upset with Richard about something and I would just go off. At first I never said anything because I thought, well, I'm afraid we're going to have a fight and then he's going to leave. And I was just always nervous about fighting. So then we didn't deal with anything. So then when I just got to the point where I was frustrated and I wanted to deal with it, I didn't know how to do it constructively.
And that wasn't 2 weeks. Okay. No. This is years that she would just hold it in, and we just did this marriage dance so that if we didn't, like she's saying, if we didn't talk about it or if we didn't fight about it, then our marriage was okay. But actually, we weren't dealing with it. And all we're doing is postponing the inevitable. And it's going to blow up in our face one day. And it's going to be bad and it's going to be ugly because we didn't deal with it when it was just a baby. We could have dealt with it when it was just a baby. But we let it grow into a full-blown...
And to where I would just explode and be like, I don't understand why you did this again. We had a talk last month. You promised that you weren't going to do X, Y, Z again. Or you said that this was going to be different and that you promised me. And I would just get, why do you always let me down? How do you always disappoint your family? And just go crazy because I was so frustrated that I couldn't control what he was doing. What were you thinking?
Now, you see, when you hear all that all sounds like legitimate questions to be asking. Hey, you're destroying your family. What are you thinking? Why did you do that? What's wrong with you?
Do you have a mental problem? I used to say that to him. Like, are you just slow? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, nobody in a healthy relationship would do this, I just thought to me it seemed logical. And then I could
ask those questions. But to me, I would just shrink up and be like, ooh, I am never going there again, because those hurts and pains, we have been carrying and manifesting and nurturing them and babying them since we were little. Yeah. And I don't want to talk about that. So, what happened at arguing?
You could argue with Richard and it did not bother him.
Because
he could just be, what
do they say? Negative attention is still attention. Negative, like when you, not advertise, like if Hollywood wants to get something out, how they, it's still attention. Negative publicity. Negative publicity is still publicity.
Publicity. Now, we're saying publicity. So he knew how to stonewall.
What is it? I thought it was publicity.
Publicity, yeah.
Publicity? Like puppies? It's publicity.
We'll talk. This is another conversation. Richard in words.
Vernacular.
Richard in words. What's the other one that you always say?
Window.
Inevitable. It's inevitable. So if I correct him, y'all, don't get mad at me. Can't help it. It's a trigger. When you found out that your highness was not your highness.
I thought
thought like your highness, like your highness. You thought
I didn't think it was your highness. I thought it was like highness, like, oh, it's a queen,
like it was
like
a word,
highness,
like
a word.
H-E-I-N-E-S or something. Like it was
like, I didn't know.
I didn't know it was high, like H-I-G-H. Anyway.
I ain't never met no highness before.
We're going to have some conflict right here if we don't get back to this. So I could win with words. So I was really good with my words. I knew how to it was like a razor. I knew how to get to him. I knew how to hurt him. I didn't know that it was hurting him because he would keep this. So the more he stonewalled and acted stoic and like it wasn't bothering him, the more I had to
react
even more so. And like I had to be even meaner and say worse things and cutting remarks because it seemed like it wasn't having any effect on him.
And I just look back now, and for me to be a husband and not care that you're just like getting all distorted and bent out of shape and angry and frustrated and crying and living in chaos, and it didn't bother me.
He used to tell me, he used to say, like, sometimes we'd lay in bed at night and we'd been arguing, whatever, and I wanted to fight some more, and finally it was quiet, and then he wouldn't say anything, and then I'd wait for it, and then he'd start to fall asleep, and I'd go, I can't believe you're going to let me just sit here and cry. Like, you're going to you don't care that I'm crying and hurting like this. I mean, I'd get up out of bed, and then he told me, your words mean nothing to me. No, your tears. That's right. Your tears mean nothing to me.
And we've learned that a type A personality isn't moved by people's emotions sometimes. That when people get emotional, we're just like, oh, come on, suck it up, buttercup. Unless it's us. We're allowed to get emotional, but we don't like when other people get emotional.
But so when we were arguing, I wanted to win. Like, both of us are type A's, but I wanted to win. What? Richard, did it bother you then?
Yes, it bothered me. It bothered me so much.
Which we didn't know till years later. I didn't know till years later when we got deep and talked about it.
I just didn't know how. I didn't want to, because as a man, sharing emotion meant you're weak. All right, that's we have that somehow, that roadblock that, man, we're not going to share emotion.
Men can only have one. What would you
we
say?
can only have one,
or one
type,
that's acceptable.
One type of emotion that's acceptable, and that's anger. And it seems like every man can have that, and husband or wives go, oh, it's okay. Your father's angry. Oh, my husband's angry right now.
Your father's upset.
He's upset. And that's the only emotion we're allowed to have. So that's the only one that we have. That covers every gamut. We're just angry all the time. But it would just tear me up inside. But I couldn't talk to her about it because that's a sign of weakness. If I try to be kind, she could take advantage of me. She might be able to use that to hurt me, because...
So he would guard his heart, and to me it just came across as that he was just this mean, hard, like, just, an ogre, because I thought, how does someone have no emotion? Like, they can't, like, it doesn't even bother him that I was crying. And, but we didn't, even through all that, until years later when we talked about it, or sometimes I would just leave. I told you all that last week in that video. I would get in my car and take off, and then he would act like it didn't hurt him. But then later when we're talking about it, he's like, I was so hurt by that, and I didn't want you to know.
I'm telling her to leave.
Yeah, he's like,
get out.
Let me pack your stuff.
But man, I'm not wanting her to leave. I did not want her to leave, and that pride. Oh my gosh, guys, pride is such a marriage killer. Pride will kill your marriage. Somebody has to humble themselves, whether it's your fault or not. I remember when Pastor Joel was saying that we had to go in and apologize, and let's do. Man, then it was like, even if I felt like it was her fault, I would still go and apologize. Because I was tired of the fighting and the escalating of scenario.
That was like 10 or 12 years of us, well, maybe 8 or 10 years of us being together. Because before that, we didn't care. We wanted to win. He was going to win, and somebody was going to be the winner.
Taking the W.
But we didn't if he loses, if he wins, I lose, and we're married. We're not supposed to want to be, big. We don't want to be losers.
We have to be on a winning team.
We want to be winning, and our pride. We had so much pride in the way that we were like, no, we're winning. And even though I knew sometimes I was right, or that he shouldn't have been doing what he was doing, how I was going about it was wrong, and I wasn't getting the outcome that I wanted. I just wasn't getting. So do you want to win, or do you want to get the outcome that you're hoping for? Conflict is not the problem. We need to have conflict because that's how we work through things. We're going to disagree. This person is going to disappoint me. I'm going to disappoint him. Your spouse is going to disappoint you. Sometimes it's going to be little tiny things, like they didn't put the lid on the toothpaste, or they didn't put something away the way that you like it, or little things, or sometimes it's going to be a huge thing. But we're human beings, and we are going to disappoint each other.
Now when I think, I said, man, I know that she's not always going to not hit the ignite button sometimes. And when she does, I need to be able to disarm that. I need to be able in my mind to say, you know what, she's having a moment right now. There's something that she's upset. I might have done it. I might not have. It might have been something else. So what can I do to diffuse the situation? What can I say, and how can I say it so that it de-escalates instead of elevates? And these are things that we constantly do every day, or at least I try every day. And I don't want to say, and I'm 100% at it, because I'm not. But it's something that is ongoing. This is marriage. I want the best marriage possible. And I know to have the best marriage possible, we have to do it God's way. And there has to be so much grace and so much mercy and so much forgiveness and so much sometimes overlooking. I told her the other day, you overlook the offense so many times. But by doing that, the way you did, and the way you let the Holy Spirit work on me, not just I'm just going to let it go, and you just deal with God. You just deal with him. And a lot of times she did that. God, I can't do it anymore. I'm about to kill him. Jesus, take him. Jesus, do something. Take him, Jesus. Take him, Jesus. Take him out, Jesus. But what happened was it started to build a trust. It started to build. I saw the mercy and grace she was having with me when I knew that she should have been yelling at me and she was loving me instead. Man, that right there takes your heart to a whole nother level. And I was able to talk to her, and I was able to open up, and I was able to feel I wasn't like that little kid anymore that was trying to protect myself from all the life hurts in my life. I'm able to lay it out on the table and say, hey, this is what's hurt me my whole entire life, and I don't know how to deal with this. Can you help me with this?
And I love that Michelle says, I love how you can't remember the details, Sherry. It shows how far away from the hurt you are. And it's funny because if we weren't doing these videos, it would be hard pressed for me to remember that, because we do it and we talk marriage stuff all the time. We're always talking to couples. We have to we remember because we're talking about it all the time. But honestly, I don't have time to sit there and dwell on those things and let it hurt me. And, we just have to move on. And the only way to forgive is just to really get past it is to let it go, like in that music Frozen, let it go, so that we can I'm trying to read this and talk. So it says, Deirdre says, Sherry, what steps do you take to back yourself down when you realize you're using your words in a hurtful manner with Richard? Okay, so this is good. That's what we're going to talk about now. Is conflict is not the problem. How we deal and manage conflict is the issue. Or the problem. So there's a thing that we learned called the DEAL method, and it's DEAL. All right, so this is pretty easy to remember, and stands for, number one, D is don't take the bait. E is explain the impact of the behavior and express your needs and expectations. A is ask questions to draw your spouse into dialogue, to gain understanding. And L is to let go of trying to manage or control the other person's behavior. Ooh,
man, L is the hardest one.
Yes, we're going to come to that because Richard will jump to L. And all the melancholy people are like, but where's the D? So we're going to do D first. So D is don't take the bait. Hardest one. That was the hardest one for me. Well, I guess control.
Because sometimes we do that.
Man, take that bait. It's like you're setting that hook. Come on. I know exactly what hot buttons. He knows my hot buttons. We know how to hook that other person. But when you do that, when you try to hook that other person into doing things for your own purpose, and that's manipulation. When you start to manipulate each other, and that's not right. That's not right in marriage or any relationship, any healthy relationship.
I remember when manipulation was happening. They're like, what are they drinking? It's just coffee. It's not spiked. But when we would try to manipulate each other, and I remember when I would manipulate her, but it would diffuse go there. But you know what, guys? Sometimes we need to go there. We're trying to suppress these feelings. It's time to get this junk out. Let's get rid of it. Let's deal with it once and for all, to save our marriages and just to save our soul, our crazy lives sometimes, So
that D is don't take the bait. So everyone has a hot button, okay? So how we react, how we respond. Are we reacting? Are we responding to things? And the difference is that a response is a purposeful, thoughtful process. So you're thinking about it. You're like, that thing's coming up. You're going to say it. And you know in your heart that in your mind, don't say it. Blah, 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 blah. But when you don't say it, that means that you're that you have a response.
It took me a while to get there.
Blah, 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 and you know what it's going to do, but you don't care because it feels so good right then, and you just want to get back at your spouse. That is that reactive.
If you're guilty of that, raise your hand. Wow, look at all those hands out there.
And a reaction is something that the speaker says something like a retort that immediately you regret saying it. You can't take it back. You're trying to get it back, like putting toothpaste back in the tube. You can't take it back, guys. So we want to be able to be responsive and not be reactive. So communicate purposely to build dialogue, not to debate. And so that's what we would do. We would always, ours wasn't healthy. So it was just like, we wanted
debate.
That's pretty funny.
Thank you.
So you don't want to debate with your spouse. You want to pause. You want to consider what your reply is going to be. Words can create peace. You can have peace. You can put fuel on that fire, or you can ignite it and put some, what's that stuff called when you put it on the gas? The fire starter.
You just said you can ignite it.
Ignite it. But what's that stuff called? That liquid stuff.
Like an accelerant?
No, like when you're doing barbecue,
Gasoline?
like charcoal. Don't you put that liquid stuff? Remember when we used to have charcoal? I don't know. Never mind. We have a gas pit now, so we can just turn it up. I can just turn
lighter
on
fluid,
that. Yeah, lighter fluid. So you can either put that lighter fluid on the situation, or you can put it out, and you can, depending on how you react. And the more that we have that responsive and we ignite things, that's when it's going to push us further apart and cause us to have more conflict and not healthy conflict. And we're going to get further away from having an agreement about the conflict to begin with. So D is to don't take the bait. E is explain the impact of the behavior and express your expectations. That just sounds so easy.
Maybe I'm going to express my expectations right now.
All right, let me tell you how I used to say it. For used to say, I'm trying to think.
Sit down before I kill you.
I used to say, what you're doing is, well, I said it at the beginning, why are you doing that? What you're doing is tearing up our family, and why would you even do something that hurt us?
How did your parents raise you? How was this okay with them? I'm like, my dad taught me this,
And so the way that I used to say it was just, everything was not expressing to him how I felt, what the situation was. I was just blowing up, and he couldn't receive it because all he heard was the Charlie Brown teacher. How does she do it?
Something like that.
And so I'm going to read this part. So, for example, if your spouse yells to make a point, empowering you and dismissing your concerns, it's important to respond appropriately. Here's how the conversation might start. Making that purchase not only disregards the agreement we made. See, I could have said that back then. But I feel disregarded too. And I never would say it like that. But if I could have said it back then, like, hey, well, you promised me last month that you weren't going to do that anymore. You weren't going to watch pornography. You weren't going to drink anymore. Whatever it is. Now you've disregarded that promise to me, and I feel disregarded. And it's about trust. But that's not how it used to be. I was like, you're not trustworthy. Nobody can trust you. But if we can explain our feelings to him, and then our expectations of what we expect, and then I would say, and you will not speak to me that way. You are not going to talk to me in that tone of voice. Like, what, I can control him? I can't control him how he's going to talk to me. But if I said, I don't want to be spoken to that way. I do not want to be disrespected in that way. And this is about a trust thing. Then we could have talked a little differently and had respect for each other when we were talking to each other, right?
Right, because arguing, she's not going to argue enough to where I go, you know what? Nobody's ever really yelled at me and said it that way before. I get it now. Thank you so much for just losing your cool, blowing your top, freaking out. Thank you. I get it. I won't do it again.
But if I had explained what the impact is and how it hurt me in a respectful voice, and explained to him my expectations about how I wanted to be treated, then we were ready to move on to the next thing, and it never got past that. It just went from crazy to crazy to crazy. Yeah. What does it say? What happens when your words are already said, and even though the issue is resolved, you still feel it isn't because your spouse?
You've got to go back and apologize. You've got to go back and apologize, and you have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And
we have to have grace with each other, y'all.
And sometimes people don't understand what forgiveness is. They just don't. It's just a word that we throw out there like, I love you, and love could be associated with hot dogs, cars, dogs. I love hot dogs. I love cars. I love dogs. I love fishing. It's just.
I love all y'all's posts.
Right. It's just love is just used so much. I love you. Well, what differentiates all of that? Right. So when you say you forgive, Dave and Ashley Willis said it so well in Naked Marriage, is you're saying I choose restoration rather than revenge. When I say when I give forgiveness, that's what I'm going for. is restoration in this relationship and not revenge.
And even if your spouse isn't the person that, like maybe you hurt them and it takes them longer to get over it and it hurts them and they're going to throw it up and they're going to remind you of it, you be the one. Somebody has to be the catalyst. Somebody has to be the one to change things. And I know Richard changed in some ways, like when he would start forgiving me, and I changed in the ways that when I started accepting his apology, even though sometimes I wasn't ready. I was like still hurting. I wanted him to hurt a little longer. I didn't think the punishment fit the crime, so it needed to be a little more longer, but it didn't. Nobody wins like that, and so we have to have grace with each other, and we have to know that we're going to say things, we're going to disappoint, but at the end of the day, I know that he's got my back. I know he has my goodwill. I know that we're a team. I know he loves me. He knows that I'm his partner. He knows that I've got his back, and even though we might have our tiffs and have our blow-ups or whatever, we still at the end of the day know this person is not against me, and they're not trying to.
We also have to learn that those words that are coming out like that is a defense mechanism. Okay, it's coming from a place of hurt, and it is a learned behavior. All right, so that's kind of like a boxer in a boxing ring. You throw a left punch, undercut, jab, jab, jab. So like, okay, throw in those words, and so we've learned to use those like as a defense mechanism to fight. So now we're going to have to relearn some things that are going to help us in this area, because if we don't, then we're going to continue to use that same jab, every time we try to talk, and your husband or wife says something to you that's a trigger, throw that jab. Throw that jab.
And you know where it's tender. You know where it gets them every time. Right. You can just keep on.
So when you don't play that and you say, hey, look, this happened the other day, and I just want you to know how it made me feel. And I don't know if it was intentional or not, but and then be able to talk about it. That's how we're able to do it now. But man, I'm just telling you, we weren't able to do that. So don't think that, oh man, they talked about it. We should be able to do this in a few weeks. This took years, and so we throw in a lot of statistics. It takes 9 to 14 years to stop living as me and to start to live as we.
Every video, we're going to tell you all that.
We're going to tell you that every single video, because some people might not have watched it the time before. And if I keep repeating this, you're going to get it. That man, if you're in year 3 or year 4 or year 5 or year 7 and you're ready to give up, 9 to 14 years, you haven't even got to the point yet to where it's sweet in your marriage. So you don't know what a sweet marriage is, because you haven't felt it yet.
And it's not automatically 9 to 14 years all of a sudden. If you're not working on it, now we're talking about people that are actually being intentional about making things better, that it's going to change. So if you've been married 20 years, you're like, well, I haven't gotten any better. But have you really intentionally been working on making it better, both of you, for 9 to 14 years? And I think when you learn these things and you get these tools, y'all can do it way quicker than 9 to 14 years. 9 to 14 years, I think, is people that are just kind of learning stuff and blindly going through it and trying to figure it out and learning, trial and error. But there are tools out there now. We have the internet, we have these videos, we have all kinds of marriage books, things that we can learn. That there is no reason why we all can't be experts in marriage. So the A of the deal is to ask questions to draw your spouse into dialogue. So you want to be able to talk back and forth. That's what adult conversations do. You talk, healthy conversations, speak, we're talking back and forth, and we're not always freaking out about everything. And so instead of asking yes or no questions, because I used to follow them around, do you remember that you said that? Do you remember telling me that you said you were never going to do that?
Did you go there?
Yes or no?
Did
yes
you do
or
this?
No? Did you do that?
How much did you spend? Did you spend this amount?
Mine was yes or no. So it was like, right. Did you do that? Yes or no? Answer my question. Answer my question. Am I the only one? So please, somebody else tell me that y'all have done that, because you're walking around trying to get that person to I don't know,
to own up to their mess.
To their stuff, and it's not a great opener. And if someone did that to you, are you going to be going, hey, thanks? You know what? Now I'm ready to have a great conversation with you. Thanks for, like Richard said earlier. God bless you. Thank you for pointing that out and for just pinging me. Now I'm just gonna.
I finally got it.
Oh man, I'm so ready to talk to you. I feel great. So we want to use open-ended questions that start with how or what. So we can ask these questions to draw our spouse into discussion. They welcome the dialogue, and it makes it just easier for us. So how did that use how and what when you start the questions? Chris, you're still learning after 32 years. Bless you. Mr. said bless you. And the reason why we want to draw our spouse into dialogue is because when we invite their thoughts and we listen to them and we start listening carefully, we start learning about them and we start to grow and we start to get past. I don't know about y'all, but I got tired of being tired. I got tired of doing the same thing, expecting a different result, same thing. It was just, and I remember telling Richard, can we just fight about something new? Like, I don't even care if we fight the rest of our lives, but could we just stop fighting about the exact same things and not getting past those things? That was the
only reason we weren't getting past those things is because we really weren't talking about them. We weren't talking about the root. Like, where did this come from? How did this manifest in your life? How did you think this was okay? How did this happen? How did this affect your other marriage? How did this affect past other relationships? And then you start talking about it and you start to realize, wow, you know what? When I was dating, it jacked up my girlfriend back then. And then when I got my first wife, it jacked up my first wife. As a matter of fact, I really never thought about it like that. And you start to have a dialogue and you start to understand that these things, like I said, are stuff that we've been dragging our whole life. And if we've never dealt with it, we're just not automatically good people. It just automatically, God says all of you have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. All of us. There's not one. Sinners. So not one person is like, well, no, that's not me. I'm actually good. We're all sinners. We've all fallen short. So we're carrying a lifelong bag of trash with us that we've never unpacked. We might have unpacked something here or something there, but we've never got to the root of it. So, we've dealt with the surface stuff, but we really never got to the life-changing things.
And if we don't get to the root of it, then we're just... And a lot of times, since we haven't gotten to the root of it, we've hurt so long and so many times, and especially if you're arguing about the same things over and over, man, you've got that. I know how I was. It was like I was wearing football gear. I had pads. I had everything because I was tired of him hurting me, and everything pinged me. So I had all this wall around me that I was not going to allow him. I didn't even want to hear what he had to say. But when we got to the point to where we started respecting what the other person, that we were, hey, you know what, maybe there's a different way to handle this. Maybe there's a different way to get to the root of this, or a different way to resolve this that we had never even considered before, because we'd always done it the exact same way, got the same results, wasn't working. Somebody had to do something different. Yeah, and so we want to ask questions to bring our spouse into, and listen to your spouse. Like, we're so busy thinking about what we're going to say next that we forget, or we just discount what it is that they have to say. And if you're the person that's the overly, like, you can talk more, or your words are, you're more of a wordsmith, then it's like you can just mow that other person over, because they're sitting there trying to process it. They're processing everything. It's all coming at them, and they feel like they're not heard. So we have to be able to hear each other. And then the L part of the deal is to let go of the need to control your spouse's behavior and manage our own. Yay.
Sounds like fun.
And so I like the word manage better than I like control, because we try to control the other I always wanted to control Richard, and no one had ever taught me growing up that you can't control what other people do or how they react. And I didn't understand. I had 2 husbands before, and I'm like, why cannot they not understand what I need them to do?
Why can't I fix them?
Why can't they just behave and do what I want them to do? And I just thought you could control, and it would frustrate me so much that I couldn't control, but I didn't know how to manage my own. Instead of trying to control Richard, I should have been trying to manage my own emotions and to control my own self. So
how do you have these conversations? How do you talk about stuff that's hard to talk about? Use us for an example. Throw our name out there and say, hey, Richard and Sherry say that the natural progression of marriage is to grow apart, not to grow together. And we haven't been able to talk. Our marriage seems like we're so far apart right now that every time we try to talk, it ends in yelling. How about if we sit down like 30 minutes from now and just come up with some things that are going to be able to benefit our marriage, to be able to talk about some stuff like finance or food or clothing or sex or whatever y'all need to talk about. But let's not talk about it now. Let's pray about it, on our own and together, and let's sit down 15, 20 minutes from now and talk about it. So you're able to get the initial statement that you want to talk about a particular subject and have a resolution for it that y'all both can live with. And then there's your line in the sand. I can live with it. Can you live with this? Yes. Okay, that's the line in the sand. And then you try to accomplish that. White knuckling doesn't work. We have to, come up with...
trying to control that other person does not work. Like, I don't care many times we argue, if the goal of the conversation is for me to control and for him to get him to do what I want and what my outcome is, it's never going to work. But I can manage my own reaction. I can decide if I'm going to respond to something and I'm going to think it through, and I'm going to have a thoughtful response, or if I'm going to react. I can, because how I react and how I respond is going to decide whether or not there's peace or whether it ignites, and vice versa. And so let's say your spouse, but he won't come on board. He doesn't do that. Hey, Alvita, that he doesn't come on, but he's not on board, or she's not on board, and I'm the one trying all the time. Then you know what? You just keep trying to do that. You just keep praying. You keep believing.
You keep being the
one, being the best that you can be. Be responsive, and not, because when I stopped being reactive to everything, there wasn't anything for us to him. He couldn't argue with me because I wasn't giving him the reaction that he wanted anymore. Now I was being responsive, and I was asking questions, and I was wanting to hear his heart. And then it was just like, after a while, he thought, okay, is she poisoning me? Yeah. But once he realized I wasn't trying to kill him, and that I really did care about him, and I wanted to get to the root of it, then he started to come around and to talk to me.
And I look back on my life, at 55 years old, and I see...
You're 55?
That's really good. And I see that the way that I am right now with my wife, that all that brokenness, I was that person a long, long time ago. And I just got worse and worse and worse as time went on. Because I never dealt with it. I just thought, this is just who I am, and one day I'll be better. One day it'll all go away. One day I'm not going to be like this. One day I'm sure, and it doesn't. I mean, we have to intentionally be the people that God has called us to be. And I mean, man, it's hard.
I love what Deirdre says. She says, if you've already lost the argument when you try to control your spouse.
That's so true.
And so remember that your first priority is to give your spouse insight on how he or she, how their behavior is affecting you. That's what we're trying to get across. We want them to know how it affects us, what our expectation is, and to have an adult conversation.
David, thanks for tuning in. Good to see you. How's the weather up north? I know it's got to be cooler than it is here.
I think too, whenever, and Richard says now, he's like, I would never want my wife to hurt like that. I would never want but and because I didn't know how to convey that to him, and it always just seemed like I was crazy, and I was,
right, it seemed like you were nagging.
Whenever I was able to tell him from my heart how I felt and how it affected me and what I expected, that's when things started to turn around. And then he was, and now when he says, I wouldn't want my wife to, because I used to think, the point is, you want your spouse to, if they knew how that hurt you like that, and you weren't acting all crazy and telling them all those horrible things, but you were really just coming to them with your heart, and y'all were talking back and forth, I just believe most people, unless they're just evil, they're not gonna want you to feel that way. They don't want their spouse that they love to feel like that, and sometimes they don't even know that that's how they feel, because they've only heard it from an anger perspective. So we want to do the deal, which is, remember the 4 things is, don't take the bait, explain the impact of your behavior and express your expectations. A is ask questions to draw your spouse into dialogue, and L is to let go of the need to control your spouse, and but we want to manage our own responses and not try to control their behavior. So we hope these are helping y'all. They help us. They help us every time, because it's like we go back to school and we get because sometimes we get off track and forget these things, and then we're like, wow, we need to put that back into place and make sure that we're being consistent with it. So it helps us. So we hope it helps you guys.
So guys, please like the page. Please.
Well, a lot of them have liked our page, but we just ask you to share the videos. Yeah. Please share our videos. And we're also putting them on YouTube. And so the reason we're the Real Brights, if y'all are wondering, like today in class, they were laughing. They're like the Real Brights as opposed to the fake Brights. So the reason that our last name is Bright, and there is actually what is it called? An atheist movement called the Brights. And so when you Google the Brights, they were coming up. And so we couldn't get the website, thebrights.com or the Bright, because always everything was theirs or they were coming up there. So we changed it to the Real Brights, because people always say we're real. Plus it's a play on words, because we're real bright.
There you go.
That was really, really smart. So that's why we're the Real Brights. And we have our best friends, her last name Bright too. Nice. And they're always going, are we the Real Brights or are you the Real Bright?
I just want to say divorce is not the answer. If you think that it's going to just tear your spouse apart, it tears your children apart. Your legacy, your flesh and blood is going to pay the price. And maybe not when they're little, because they're small. But man, when they start acting out and they start becoming young adults, and you start to see the hurt of divorce, now you got to carry that as well, and you associate it with divorce instantly. You'll know because you didn't stay and work through your anger issues or your pornography issues or your drinking issues, and you let God change you from the inside, and then, man, you dealt with all of these demons, that, man, you will see that your kids are going to be dealing with the same demons as well. Right. So, guys, we got to fight for our marriage. Let's turn our attention where it needs to be, and that's against the enemy, Satan, who comes to kill, steal, and destroy. He hates marriage because God loves marriage, and he knows the power and the glory that marriage can bring. So, man, guys, we pray for you guys. We want you all to be married, and we know that you guys can do it.
Yeah, and pray for us, because that it encourages us. And the enemy does not like marriage, so he's going to come at us even harder and trigger things because what we're doing is helping people. We've been getting a lot of amazing messages from couples, and some that are really sad that because only one person's wanting to work on it, but we're hearing feedback, and the ones that are that it's helping people. So the last thing is that we are going to be, our studio is almost done, but we have to get the signage made behind it. So we're trying to decide, and maybe y'all can help them vote. We're going to it's either going to be Married Life Live, which is what we've been kind of talking about it, or Real Marriage Live, or Married Life with the Brights. So think about that.
Or if you have something that sounds great, play on words, send it.
Yeah, something along those lines. So that's what we're working with before we get the sign made to put behind us. So is that it?
That's it.
I guess that's it. So we love you guys, and thank you for sharing. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please share the videos. That's the biggest thing for us, is to get the word out. We would love to come to your church or to your anything that you have to do about marriage. We love workshops and conferences and anything to do marriage, and we also love to do comedy date nights. So we can do that. Come on a Friday night, do a comedy date night at your church, and then maybe you can stay over Saturday and do a couple workshops on marriage.
And then I'm also thinking about opening up a clean comedy club here in Houston.
Yeah,
so I'm just keeping that.
We're trying to figure that out.
If y'all have any ideas, we've never done that before. Don't even know how that would run, but if you might, man, let us know.
Or even maybe if it's not a club that we open up that we own, but maybe somebody that has a venue that'll let us do some clean comedy nights or maybe some marriage stuff. We just have some.
We just
really
want to help
big
people.
Ideas.
We want to help people. And
so we love you guys. Have a great Sunday and peace out.
Deuce.